Yeah, hello and welcome everybody to today's Collaboard webinar. We're talking today about how to transform the collaboration in the federal or Department of Defense and in global organization. And Collaboard as an online whiteboard tool has evolved a lot in the last year, especially in the field of security. And it's a great pleasure to have with me here today Zach Burke from VTG and also Gianluca Centolani from Collaboard. And we will start with a short introduction, and I would like to hand over to Zach, and please let us know who you are.
Mike, thanks for having me here. Yeah, so quick introduction here. My name is Zachary Burke. I previously was the government director for the DOD's Ironbank platform, which is the U.S. Department of Defense's supply chain security threat intelligence platform that we provide as a service for all the branches of service and departments of the Department of Defense. Running a program like that, obviously, you are always on the look for companies and partners that are, actually security first focused. And I ran across Collaboard, and they became, quickly, not just, an international partner of ours that was interested in experimenting with, kind of the theories that we have around cybersecurity that we'll talk about a little later that are pretty innovative, but just one of the best partners in general. And so I'm happy to be here to talk with everybody about the experience that we've had working together and how you could benefit from that work we've already done, and maybe how you could benefit from a future partnership with the Ironbank or Collaboard. And thanks for having me again, fellas.
My name is Gianluca Centolani. I work at Collaboard since 2018. I'm now focused on international sales, but I was serving as product manager, so I've seen all the evolution of the product. And actually, as Zach was mentioning, we are a security-first company. So being in Ironbank is really a milestone that we achieved and we are very proud of. And in this presentation, you'll see why.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Zach and Gianluca. So my name is Michael Görig. I'm one of the co-founders of Collaboard, and some people also say I'm like an online whiteboard evangelist, as I'm now working almost a decade with these whiteboard technologies. And before we talk a little bit more about security, I would like to take the chance, just 5 minutes, to tell you a little bit more on what Collaboard is and to show you shortly how the application looks like. And just to let you know, the complete presentation we're doing today is already made in Collaboard. So we don't focus that long on the demo, as you will see the product and experience the whiteboard during the presentation anyway. So jumping to another board. So just want to give you a short overview. So we consider Collaboard as one of the most secure online whiteboards available on the market. And this is also why we're here today. But the big question is, why do we need a secure online whiteboard? What's the reason for that? And I think a good reason to argue about this is because of what people do with the online whiteboard. So I put here some main use cases our customers are fulfilling with Collaboard. So they are using the online whiteboard for meetings, for workshops, for brainstorming session, maybe designing a new product, working on new services. They also use it for project planning, design thinking, strategy meetings, and so on. And if you just look at these use cases, a lot of information that is generated by the people while working in Collaboard, that's sensitive information. So let's say we have an aerospace and defense company brainstorming about a new satellite or something like that. So in this case, you really want to protect this information in a much better way than just having like a standard cloud solution or something like that. So this is how we approach security in Collaboard to different hosting options, for example, to make sure that these use cases we see here, that all the data is protected in the best way possible. And what is Collaboard in general? It's an online whiteboard that provides you an infinite whiteboard canvas. So I'm just zooming out a little bit here to give you a short overview of how this could look like when you use this in a project planning scenario. And now we just walk through some of the main features in Collaboard just to give you a little bit an idea. So let me zoom in a little bit. And this is one of the first exercises we have here. This is like an icebreaker, something super important when we think about online meetings and have people engaged when working together remotely. And here we already see quite nicely, we have here the option to add ideas in sticky note. We can upload images like of this famous guitar player here. Or we have also even the possibility to work with multimedia content, like a video directly on the whiteboard. So don't think just about Collaboard as a standard whiteboard where you can draw and add some sticky notes. It's a much richer experience, providing you a digital workspace where you can combine a lot of different elements directly on the board itself. If we look here at the user interface on the left side, we see the toolbar that allows us to add all these different media, like documents, PDF, Word files, and some of the use cases and things people are doing with Collaboard, for example, are uploading their documents and making some annotations, for example, using the drawing tools. So that's a really standard whiteboard functionality. Being able to choose here the highlighter to highlight what's important in the document, for example. So things you have done on site in the same meeting room together, you can now do remotely with a dispersed team. It doesn't really matter where the people are. So you can bring the best talents together on the same board to collaborate visually. And this visual collaboration, I think that's the most important part, because if you think about how people get information, doing it visually, it's the most efficient way. It's more efficient than email. It's more efficient than chat. It's more efficient than in-document collaboration where you are very limited. So having this infinite canvas where you can do all this stuff provides a complete new way and new experience of bringing collaboration, especially in global organizations, to the next level. Let me show you some other use cases people are fulfilling with Collaboard. So one thing people do a lot is mind mapping. So this is now a combination out of images, lines. You see here this solar system that is connected everything together. And when we talk about the whiteboard, a whiteboard doesn't need to be always white, right? So in Collaboard, we have the possibility to change the background color based on our needs. And we even implemented something that especially people in the DOD or in the aerospace and defense industry like a lot. So you can switch to a very beautiful dark mode. So let me just switch the background color of Collaboard to dark. And now if we zoom out, all these things that have been white before, they turn dark. And here I just see I have a rectangle that is dark, which I need to delete. And now we see this mind map looks a little bit different. Another use case people are fulfilling is like process mapping. It's creating roadmaps. So everywhere where you need to visualize something, and that doesn't fit in a PowerPoint slide, this is what you can do in a very nice way with Collaboard. Now, thinking about all these things here, so you have a lot of elements you can put to the board. We need some tools that allow us to steer and to manage what's happening on the board. And this is why Collaboard provides you with a big variety of facilitator tools. And that's the last thing I'm going to tell you here about the product before we start with our Ironbank and security session. So Collaboard has some facilitator toolkits. So if you think about what you had maybe in the past, in the physical room where there was a facilitator who was able to tell people how long to do an activity, or when you wanted to vote about some ideas and stuff like that. This is something you can easily implement with Collaboard. So there's a implemented and very sophisticated voting and rating feature. There's like a timer, follow-me mode, presentation mode, and so on. So it's a very sophisticated collaboration tool for visual collaboration. That's basically the idea. And let's zoom just out again to get an overview about how a board like this could look like. And the most important thing is when you start with Collaboard, you can either start on a blank canvas, or you can use one of the hundreds of predefined templates for a lot of different use cases. Yeah, this was Collaboard in a nutshell. Of course, we could talk here hours on all the functionality and the gimmicks and what's cool about the product. But that's not the goal for today. The goal for today is talking about security. So I'm jumping back here to our initial presentation. And we prepared this in a way that we are asking some questions to the people. So I would like to start with Zach. And Zach, it would be super interesting for me and the audience if you provide us a short overview about Ironbank and the role it has within the U.S. Department of Defense.
Yeah. So to give everybody, kind of a quick overview of what Ironbank was and what the problem statement, kind of was and has evolved into, is that we needed a better way to measure the assurance level that we have in our software applications and do that at scale, right? In the DOD, traditionally, software assurance compliance was done at the program level. There are many hundreds, if not thousands, of programs that evaluate and accredit software for their trusted runtime environments, effectively happening at the edge, right? And that's not very efficient. And so what the problem statement was is, how can we create a platform of common services to do supply chain security and be a threat intelligence platform for the Department of Defense? So effectively what we did is we built a platform and a software pipeline that is able to take software artifacts directly from software manufacturers. We call this zero distance delivery. It's a part of our philosophy that we think that software needs to be delivered to us directly. There is no third-party marketplace inside of the Ironbank like you may see at other large large marketplaces out there, whether you're consuming software through your hyperscale cloud provider or through any other container repository or repository of software. Whether they advertise it as secure or not, you have no reasonable expectation that software is coming from the first party. In the Ironbank, we will only do business with first parties, and we have a validation process that we use to make sure that the artifacts that we're using to build software containers inside of our pipeline come from the actual businesses themselves that are making these applications. And so as the pipeline build process runs, we run a lot of our threat intelligence tools and perform analysis on these applications and software artifacts and aggregate findings in the database that exists behind the Ironbank. And this database is used to create a metric, right? A couple of different metrics that we use to evaluate the relative riskiness of a software application. We call those ABCs and ORAs. So acceptance baseline criteria and overall risk assessment. And effectively what the ABCs are doing is they're measuring the compliance of that particular piece of software with Ironbank policies and best practices, and you get a compliant with Ironbank practices or a not compliant with Ironbank practices flag. And ORAs is a percent-based score that goes from 0 to 100. The theory is that it works pretty much, I guess, 100% is an A++, right? A 0% is, not very good. And so if you use the Ironbank website, you can break down deeper into the different components of the overall risk assessment that'll give you an understanding of what those weighted criteria are and how we, extrapolated our assessment, which is a huge advantage for, the government that wants to consume software and make risk-based decisions faster, because we are continuously updating the overall risk assessment on a daily basis. Traditionally, these risk assessments were performed annually by manual cyber risk assessors. Our process performs this assessment, systematically every day, and then aggregates that data into a report, and then, quantifiable, metrics that show up in the, overall risk assessment. So the platforms that are using the product, are able to focus on other things, which is effectively what, the Ironbank is solving for the Department of Defense. Is we're trying to reskill and refocus, thousands of individuals that are performing these daily assessments and doing this for them as a service, and providing them a better service than they're capable of doing on their own. And I know that was kind of a long-winded explanation there, but that's pretty much what the Ironbank is doing, and that's what their mission is on a day-to-day basis.
So just one question to that. So it's also some sort of like a label, right, for software tools for an Ironbank, then that they are compliant with all these high security standards.
Yeah. So the Ironbank is a process. It's not an official designation, like a FIPS stamp or a FedRAMP compliance certificate would get you, and I think that's because of our own personalities. Like we wanted to run an experiment and see how much organic or adoption that we could get, because we believed that the only way, and I still believe the only way that we can prove that we have something valuable is that it organically gets adopted across the Department of Defense. And we've proven that theory. I mean, the product is prolifically used in the federal government, especially the DOD, without any kind of policy mandates requiring individuals to use it. We have hundreds of thousands of registered users, and the Ironbank website gets 1.7 unique million visits, a year. So it's an extremely popular product in private industry and government. I mean, most of the major companies that that trade, on the NASDAQ are using the Ironbank as a foundation for their software development. And we have a tremendous amount of public-private partnership there and interest in, the general philosophy of continuous software assessments and zero trust supply chain and zero distance delivery, because as far as I understand, the U.S. federal government at the Ironbank is doing that better than anybody else.
Yeah, cool. So super interesting. Let's so we have another question. So I would like to ask you, and that's maybe a little bit more into the detail of the process. So how does Ironbank ensure that the security and the accreditation of its contrast software repository? So how does this process look like?
Yeah. So I think to start from the beginning, right, one of the important things is zero distance delivery. Like if you ask yourself a question, do you know where the software that you consume comes from? Apps that you download from an app store? Did you actually know where that application was, or how that application made it to you? How many hops were there? Is it being provided to you through a content delivery network? How does that content delivery network validate who the hosters are? Are there third-party hosting, that they're outsourcing to? Where are those servers located? There's there's a big business behind the delivery of software. And I think a lot of people, kind of just take that for granted, that there's an underlying, there are businesses that are in the business of delivering content to your phone, right? Or streaming content to you. And big brands are outsourcing that, but just like they do anything else, because there are people that will come to them and say that they can do it cheaper, or there are volunteer networks of content delivery, individuals, universities and whatnot, that will mirror, downloads for specific things that they want to support. And it's a very complex network of systems and companies that actually serve software, to consumers. And I am personally very concerned, after researching, some of the vulnerabilities of, this network. And so the first step of us making sure that we can secure applications is we don't use content delivery networks. The Department of Defense is the content delivery network here. And so that's the first level of security, is through, a secured connection, these artifacts are being delivered directly to a DOD environment, and, the U.S. federal government is doing the content delivery for you. And we audit this process pretty explicitly. And, the chain of custody, kind of feature suite that we're working on is becoming more mature, as we grow as an organization, because we're only, 2.5 years old now. So just kind of coming out of startup mode, moving into, growth mode, and then, maturity mode after that. So that is effectively the first step that we're taking to protect the consumers of the applications. The second step is that we perform the build on these software applications. So we take all of these artifacts that were delivered to us. We enable software companies to come into the Ironbank, build what we call container hardening manifests, which are the instructions for the pipeline to take the artifacts and assemble them into a container. And at build time, we are creating what we call a body of evidence, or, you may have heard this referred to as a software bill of materials. And so this is another thing that the U.S. federal government is doing inside of a controlled environment to get after our philosophy of zero trust supply chain, is that, these artifacts, we're touching them, we are storing them, we are compiling them into a usable, functional piece of software, and then we're documenting what it is that we use to perform the build process in a very high quality and trustworthy, attestation that individuals can come and take from us to understand what's actually in their software. Because if you were to have a vendor build a bill of materials for you, they're just flat files effectively. You could remove anything you want, just as easily as modifying a Word document. So the people that are performing that process for you is very important, and the trust that you would have for them is very important. So that's why, kind of our philosophy is build here. It's one of the critical, security kind of pillars of the Ironbank, is that we are handling all of the artifacts in a trusted, offline build process that uses trusted, hardened, runners to perform these builds, all using, DOD and defense best practices. And so the bodies of evidence that you get, are some of the best that you could get access to. The next thing that we do to ensure, security of these applications are we do continuous vulnerability scanning, because the pipeline is connected to our threat intelligence databases that are integrated with the Ironbank. Some, not all of those intelligence findings are made publicly available to anyone. The Ironbank's open to the public. You can go make an account there. And we'll put the link in the chat here before the end of the presentation. And you can see what our security findings are on all the tools there. Collaboard in particular is the most secure whiteboarding tool that we have. It's by a country mile, and that's particularly why I'm interested in kind of evangelizing and supporting what it is that they have going on here, because no sooner do we have a finding, does Collaboard commit to figuring out how to fix it. And a part of the ABCs and RAs is responsiveness from the vendor. There's a portion of the score that is timeliness in fixing issues, and Collaboard takes these findings very seriously, and they're kind of the model example that I have for moving the security meter up and to the right, and us performing these continuous scans and giving them access to this data that they may or may not have, because it's expensive and it's hard to aggregate, I think has been very helpful for them to kind of get what the DoD is interested in from a security perspective in a structured way. And I think in a nutshell, those are kind of the three big components of what the Ironbank is doing to secure applications for all of our products.
Yeah, so thank you very much for this overview. So Gianluca will talk a little bit later how the process looked on our side. But before we do that, we have one more question for you. And so in what ways does Ironbank differ from other software repositories in terms of security standards and practice? I think you already covered that a little bit in the answer before. Maybe you can just provide again the highlights.
Yeah, for sure. I think, really to drive home the point here is, zero distance delivery. Like, there is no content delivery network underneath of the Ironbank. It is, the U.S. federal government that's delivering you a piece of software, and we can prove that, through auditability, which I think is important, because when you consume something from the Ironbank, you can now say where this application came from, which in other cases is, if you spend time investigating it, you definitely won't be able to say that with any level of confidence. I think the second thing that differs the Ironbank from other repositories is the open source feature of the information that we're aggregating. The other marketplaces claim to do security scans and claim to manage all of these things for you, but they don't make any of these findings public, because companies are, from my personal experience, very, very adverse to making these security findings public. And so that's why I celebrate companies like Collaboard that are comfortable in putting their software applications into our process and makes totally transparent, the cyber assessment of their tools. There's, a lot of maturity there that they didn't know how their assessment was going to come out. It could have came out horrible and could have affected, the profitability of the business or confidence in customers in the pipeline. But, Mike and Gianluca wanted to send it in anyway, because they wanted to see the Ironbank as an opportunity to improve. And I think the best way to improve is working in the open to give people an understanding of where you are today. And when you get to a level of security that is in the excellence category where Collaboard is today, then now you can advertise that to your customers, and it's a net positive and not a net negative. And you can't just be an ostrich with your head in the sand anymore as it relates to cybersecurity. I mean, all of the effective assessment data coming out of the the big shops like McKinsey and Gartner and Forrester is saying that by 2025, 60% of organizations are going to be at risk from supply chain attacks, because vendors and their networks are going to be compromised. And you can't ignore this anymore. 60% is you, right? You're going to be affected by this, and you need to think about it, and you need the best way to think about it is to, in an agile way, make the work visible. And that's what the Ironbank is doing, is making the cybersecurity work for all of its tools and partners visible, so that not just that company can work on it, the Ironbank itself, and the DOD can apply resources to assist in, resolving some of these issues. And we have in the past, and we'll continue to do that, into the future, to build that public-private partnership bond that, we've been working on.
Yeah, well, we really like this this philosophy of transparency and openness, and this is something we also started when we launched Collaboard. So from the beginning on, we also had a public roadmap where the people just could see what are we working on, which features are coming next. But what's next now is some questions for Gianluca. So let me just jump here shortly to the next slide. So I think we are going here to Gianluca and activating again the focus mode to hide the user interface. And yeah, Gianluca, let us know a little bit more about the key milestones we had by integrating Collaboard with Ironbank.
Well, actually, being in Ironbank helped also us improve, as Zach said, was a challenge because nothing was granted, because cybersecurity can be tough, and we always put this first, but we weren't sure that everything could go smooth, even if we do this every day. So we got some really great advice from them, because actually the base image of our container was not allowing us to go on the most secure environment for the DOD that have impact level 5 and 6. And so to reach that, we needed to change the base image that we were using, and we started to use Ubuntu FIPS that allowed us to being able to be ready for this impact level 5 and 6. And this actually came because of the advice and the consulting that we got from Ironbank as well. So it's not just the software repository, but there are people that actually helps you in improving the security of your application. As Zach mentioned before, there's a security score, and they really try to make the vendor in his best way possible secure. So they give you also advices. And so we did this process. It took a while, but we were able then to finally being accredited and available. So now we are publicly available on Ironbank, and this was a really great milestone for us.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, it's something took some time, as you said, and also some investment, but we're very happy that we did that. And yeah, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the benefits for our customers, basically, that we are on this repository, Gianluca.
Well, of course, as Zach said, there is this process of daily scans. So we were doing scans against vulnerabilities for sure before delivery a new version of the product. But this way, we were kind of obliged in creating a framework that allowed us to check like daily what were the findings, and a process where we could fix them in time, because if you don't fix them, then you're not available anymore in the repository. So it was really important to have this, to structure in a better way our process. And so now our customer can have a software that is validated daily, scanned daily, that has the FIPS certification, that has all these compliance, and so even if, as Zach said, it's not let's say an official stamp like FedRAMP, for example, but it's de facto something that is, let's say, if an application is in Ironbank, the party, an agency, or the let's say someone from the DOD can take the application and it just need to fill some paperwork, but it can be sure that this can run efficiently and without problems.
Yeah, so super interesting. That I think this was one of the biggest milestones also for us, to be able to tell, hey, we are one of the most secure online whiteboards on the market, and it's not just us telling to the customer. We also were able to prove this. And I have one more question for you, Gianluca. So, how do we now leverage this Ironbank security feature and enhance our own Collaboard security?
Well, so Zach mentioned this security score. So they give us advice on what we can do to improve. So this was something that we took seriously, and because all these findings are publicly available, and all the response that we do is publicly available, so all this transparency made let's say sure that we had our process to change a little bit. Also with the ISO certification, this was even more let's say standardized, and we were able to create a security framework that was even stronger than before. So before we were always kind of trying to be a security first company, putting cybersecurity at the core, but now we can really say that our software is one of the most secure, if not really the most secure online tool. With this continuous monitoring and with all this practice, we can make sure that this is happening in the right way.
Now I have one more question for you, Gianluca, that just came to my mind. So as a Collaboard, so we're offering our solution as a self-hosted application, but we're also running some cloud instances for our customer, for example, in Germany, at the German Telecom Cloud. And maybe you can tell us a little bit on how the whole Ironbank process impacted application security in our public cloud environments.
Well, the application that you have in the cloud, it's the exact same that you have that you can self-host. The artifacts that are in Ironbank are the same that are used to deploy in the German Telecom GDPR compliant environment or in the other cloud environments. So our customer can be sure that all these security efforts that we are doing for the DOD, they can also be received in the same way when we are talking about the cloud solution. So
this is, I think, a good clarification, as we also have a lot of customers using Collaboard just from the cloud. So let's go to our next slide. And so maybe before we dive into the question, maybe you can tell us something about Smokey, Zach, because I was always wondering if there is a nice story behind him.
So this happened before my time.
Okay.
But Smokey is officially a little green alien.
Okay.
He's not associated with the Star Wars universe, and he was just kind of a result of some sketching that one of our staff artists did, and he just kind of stuck. He originally started off as a doodle that somebody was just kind of daydreaming about, and we didn't have a mascot, and everybody liked it, and I think the little green alien was popular. There's really not an explanation for any of the elements of him. I don't think he was specifically designed to represent like Platform One. He's just a thing that, you know, kind of we liked as a group, and he just stuck.
Yeah, so I think it's a good choice. I like it a lot. So now let's maybe jump to the other question. So maybe you can give a little bit background. So why it is critical for federal and DOD agency to use applications like Collaboard that are hosted on Ironbank?
Yeah. So this is pretty important. So FOCI is one, right? Not to spill any beans here, but I'd be pretty concerned about foreign influence in some, you know, major popular whiteboard tools that are available on the internet that you might be using today. I think that is one. And Collaboard, you know, being in the Ironbank and being as high a scorer as it is, and us advertising and supporting the solution, you know, writings on the wall there. I think that this is, you know, the most secure whiteboard that you could get access to. And I don't think you could find a better group of more responsive individuals that if there was a cyber finding that, you know, I mean, we're on the phone, you know, multiple times a week now with projects that we have going on, and you've been nothing but responsive to us and fixing things that we've needed to get fixed. And so I think the reason why it's critical for, you know, the U.S. federal government or any organization, right, because 60% is you, right, you're going to be affected by supply chain issues, is one, this company is extremely responsive to cybersecurity incidents and is working on supporting not just their Ironbank deployment, but DOD customers that are using Collaboard. So we're working, you know, collaboratively to make sure that, you know, the same product that you would use is the same product that the DOD is using. You know, there's commonality in the code base there. From a corporate perspective, you know, we don't want to have a different fork. We want to make sure that the work that we're doing is securing everybody else's environments also. So the collaboration and responsiveness is one, and I think, you know, foreign influence is another one. That's the hard thing to nail down, you know, and the Ironbank in general is working on a strategy to make a metric like that more publicly available to individuals, but foreign influence should always be a concern because, you know, these huge widespread, you know, supply chain attacks that are happening at, you know, like LastPass or SolarWinds, there's always suspicion around these events, right? How do these, you know, how do these intrusions happen, right? There's people whose job it is every single day to go work for businesses and try and leak information or try and manipulate the position that they have to give an untrustworthy person access to things. And I think that, you know, I think that this product is 100% a group of people that are trying to build a secure security tool, and I would seriously consider using it. I mean, I am using it, so I'm buying as a customer.
Yeah, we're happy to hear that. I have another question. So how does Collaboard support? So what are these unique requirements of the federal and the DOD agencies in terms of security and collaboration? I think you already covered that a little bit on a high level, but maybe you have something you want to add here to this question.
Yeah, so I think some of the unique requirements that we have are trust, right? Like digital whiteboarding is not ubiquitously used across, you know, the DoD, right? And I think the reason why it's not used is because there's a preference for physical spaces, because we, you know, have the belief that our physical spaces are more secure, right? When in fact, you know, there's an argument to say that they aren't, you know, like a whiteboard, you know, you can't capture individual user data about, you know, instrumented, you know, what users are interacting with things. Has a user tried to interact with something that they shouldn't have, right? What do they spend their time doing? There's a ton of metadata built in the back end of Collaboard that would enable you to use, behavior-based intelligence to secure, effectively your roadmaps and your collaboration spaces for your teams. I mean, my teams, are digital first, right? They were in the government, they still are. My teams today that I'm working with at VTG are digital first. We work in these types of environments, and there's things that you can do in a digital space that you can't do in a physical space, and vice versa. But from a security perspective, there are additional things that we could do on top of digital whiteboards to secure the data, whether that's we can mark it better, right? If we're taking images or content from another system and dragging and dropping it into Collaboard, right? We can control the leaks of information because the board can be tagged with a specific, data marker. And if the data we're trying to import has a specific data marker, we can create a process for not allowing that information to go to the board to be shared with users. So it provides you additional levels of control that you don't have in physical spaces. And in my opinion, is more secure if you can find vendors that have gone through a regimented process to show that they're trustworthy and to show that the tool that they have is capable of being run, in trusted runtime environments to enable all of the benefits that digital collaboration can offer us, because you can't have 10 people writing on a whiteboard at one time, but in a digital space you can, and you can do things like we're doing in front of you today, where we can give presentations showing data that doesn't fit, on a standard slide, which has always been a problem of mine, is trying to fit your idea or concept when they're especially large into a tiny little box that was designed for bullet point presentations, right? I mean, that's what the technology was designed for previously, but now we have something that's more functional. It enables us to, we design our trusted architectures in this thing. I mean, we have asset packs that we can use to draw out architectural diagrams, and all of this is trusted and secured information that, using the role-based access control features with Collaboard makes it more secure, because the other products weren't designed with that in mind, that you would be doing, secure cloud architecture, collaboration work inside of their tool, right? It's more playful, right? Like, hey, in here and do icebreakers and, meet each other. That's what those tools were designed for. This was designed for a different purpose, which is more aligned with our purpose, which is tech collaboration, engineering collaboration, and the security feature suite is reflective of, the different problem statement.
Yeah, that's true. So some say that like security is almost in our DNA. And one reason maybe is because the Collaboard is from a Swiss company called IBV, which is now 43 years old. So it was founded in 1981. And in the last 2 decades, we have been doing consulting and software in security already. So we had a big security backpack when we developed Collaboard. So that's a little bit in our DNA to provide software with this level of security. Now, I have another question for Gianluca. So, Gianluca, if you think about beyond the federal and the DOD sector, so how does the Collaboard's availability on Ironbank benefits organizations globally? What's your thoughts on that?
I think we talked about this a little bit even before, but I'm going to recap. So basically, if you are an organization inside the DOD or a federal organization, you already, let's say, know what Ironbank is and why software coming from there is trustworthy and secure. But if you have heard how the process to being there is working, basically, even if you are an organization that is global organization or Fortune 500 or a company in Europe, in Asia, or whatever. And if you care about cybersecurity, you can basically see with transparency our containers in that repository. You can see the findings. You can see how fast we fix them. So there is lots of transparency that, I mean, if for an assessment will be super important. So you can see that if we are there, it means that we fix in time the vulnerabilities. So our software is secure, and also as we said at the beginning in the process with the consulting that they gave us, we also implemented a new baseline with these Ubuntu FIPS images. So we support also these secure protocols, and so the application is definitely even more secure now. So not only because of these daily scans, but also because we changed a little bit the base image, and now the application can run in this level 5 and 6 environment for the DoD that, let's say, transferred to the real world means that they can really run in secure environments.
Yeah, so I always thought about, okay, what's level 5 and 6, as I'm not a US citizen, so I'm not really aware of that. So I looked this up, and these are really data concerning national security. And if I look at this, then there is maybe not more critical data than these kind of things. So it's super interesting that Collaboard is supporting this now.
Yeah, you can also run Collaboard in an air-gapped environment. So if you really have security measures that are very strict, you can run it without any connection to the internet in a private network, and you can do that. But as we said, the same application run from public cloud to your air-gapped environment. So it's always the same, and you can decide if you want to host your data or leave the data to, let's say, protected by us.
So I have one last question, Jean-Luc, and then we're almost at the end of our time. So in what ways does the collaboration between Collaboard and Ironbank set now a new standard for secure digital collaboration platform?
Well, I think as Zach mentioned before, basically our application is kind of reference case in their repository. We have a microservice architecture. We have more than 40 containers for the application. So it's really built in a way that is trying to make the software most secure as possible, most easily manageable. So it's really having this score from them that we try to improve every time. We always try to adapt to all the certification possible, so that we can really be available to anyone that really needs a secure application. So it's this is we are trying to build trust and reliability, and with this, I think, with this openness, we make this available to everyone.
Yeah, cool. I think it's a very nice statement for the end. So let me zoom out a little bit. This was the presentation we have checked today. So now we have time for maybe one question. So let me just check if we had like a question. We don't have a question in chat. So if somebody is now having a question, please write it to the chat. Okay, so this is a question for you, Zach. So what is your biggest lesson learned on scaling something as big as Ironbank for the DOD?
I think that's a great question, John. My biggest lesson is, I think nobody leads alone, right? Like the Ironbank is only successful because there's a huge network of supportive individuals that want to fund it, that want to consume containers from it, and that want to participate in the security philosophy. And without, building a team of the willing, right? Big initiatives won't scale in the DoD. And I think, I think that's probably the biggest lesson that I've learned is there's no level of power or authority that's going to scale your solution, right? I mean, there's things like, FIPS is ultimately all powerful. And if you read the documents, every workload needs to be FIPS compliant, but every workload isn't FIPS compliant. And why is that? I think the reason for that is because, you need a community of the willing. Some people need to figure out that this stuff values them, and the service that you're building, like, if you have a community of the willing, you're building something valuable for people. And if it's not valuable, it's not going to scale, and it won't be ubiquitously adopted.
Cool. I think that was a great answer. So we're almost done with the time. So I want to thank you, Gianluca, and also thank you very much for SEC for all these insights today. So for me, it was super interesting. I also learned some new things, which is always great. So thank you, everybody. And for those who maybe jumped in later, we'll have a recording of the session. So we will share this after with you. And in this sense, I wish you all a great evening from Switzerland, and hope to see you soon.
Take care, everybody. Thanks for
Bye-bye.
coming.
Thank you. Bye-bye.